Hello, seventh grade. Good morning. Hope you guys had a good weekend. Um, I don't have access to Doceri, so I'm trying to use the recorder function on the notebook software and see if I can record this and send this to you as a QuickTime file. Okay. All right. So it's chapter 2, lesson 7, solving proportions. We've done a little bit of this in sixth grade. And many of the problems that we looked at in sixth grade are problems where you can just simply look at the problem, look at the proportion, and probably compute the value in your head. But as you can see in this lesson, it's going to be a little more than that in seventh grade, right? Okay, so let's define a proportion. A proportion is a pair of equal ratios. Or another way to say this is it's an equation that shows that two ratios are equal. Okay, there are two ways to solve a proportion. The first one is by using the multiplication property. And once I show you a problem, you'll understand what I'm talking about. So let's say I have a proportion 3 to 5 equals x to 12. I can isolate x by multiplying both sides of the equation by 12. So if I want to isolate this, get another one. Okay, I can multiply both sides of the equation by 12. And if I do that, these two cancel out. Right. So this 12 and this 12 cancel out, leaving me with x. And on the left side of the equation, I have 36 over 5 simplified give me 7.2 equals x. Now keep in mind that you can only write the value of x in a decimal form, because what you have here, it looks like a fraction, but it's a little deceptive because these are ratios and not fractions. So it'll be weird to write 7 and 1/5 here over 12. So the best way to write the value of x is to write it in decimal form. Okay. Okay, let's talk about solving proportions using cross products, which I think is um, a more dependable method, seamless. I'm going to use a slightly different proportion. I have 5 to 8 equals 12 to y, and I'm going to multiply them across. So it'll be 5 times y equals 12 times 8, which gives me 5y equals 96. And if you divide both sides by 5, you get y equals 19.2. And again, notice that I'm writing it in decimal form. And you can definitely use a decimal form here. So you can say 5 to 8 equals 12 to 19.2. Okay. No, that's not what I meant to do. Magic pen. Okay. Delete that. Get my magic pen. So I can say 12 to 19.2. Okay. Now, why do cross products work? Now, let's assume that both these ratios are equal. A to B equals C to D. multiply both sides of the equation by the LCM of the denominators, which will be b and d. Uh, One quick way to find the common multiple of a denominator, of set of denominators, is by simply multiplying the denominators. So LCM here would be BD, B times D. So I'm going to multiply both A to B by BD, like I have here, and I'm also going to multiply C to D by BD. And you realize that the B here and the B here cancel out, the D here and the D here cancel out. Now you would agree with me that I can cancel factors, right? So B here is a factor, B here is a factor. Likewise, you have D, which is a factor, or 1 over D, which is a factor, and D is another factor, so I can simplify. Leaving me with D times A on the left side and C times B on the right side. Rearrange the terms. I have AD equals BC. Isn't that what you would get if you did the cross product? A times D is AD. B times C is BC. Now A and D are called the extremes of the function, or the extremes of the proportion. And C and B are called the means of the proportion. In other words, the first value in the proportion and the last value in the proportion are called the extremes, and that makes sense. And C and B, which are right in the middle, are called the means of the proportion, like mean or the average. So in a proportion, the product of the extremes should always equal the product of the means. AD must equal BC. Okay, let's look at some proportions here. Now we need to find the value of H. Now I'm sure it's not impossible to find out the value of H in your head, but it's going to be a challenge. And I know there are some of you here who want to do that, but I'm going to, at least for now, discourage you from doing that. At a later time, if you feel inspired to do it, go ahead. But right now, we're going to use the cross product and find out the value of H. So I'm going to multiply 7 times 5 and 5 times 2, and I'm going to multiply 13 by H. Right? So 7.5 times 5.2. I will definitely encourage you to try and do this in your head. It's actually 39. So 13 equals 13H. Divide both sides by 13, and you get H equals 3. One more problem. This is a problem that's harder to do in your head without showing all the work and doing the work so you can see what you've done. You're going to use the cross products. So 3 times quantity W minus 4 and 5 times quantity W plus 6. I'm going to distribute the 3 to the W and 3 to the negative 4, and then 5 to the W and 5 to the 6. So 3 times W will give me 3W. 3 times negative 4 will give me negative 12. And on the right side, I should get 5W plus 30. All right. Now, once we get to this stage, this is essentially one of the previous lessons that we did, where you rearrange the terms and you realize that there are the variable terms are on both sides of the equation, so you need to combine them. So I'm going to move the, all right, let's start with the constants. I'm going to add 12 to both sides, right? And these two cancel out. And I have 3w equals 5w plus 42. I'm going to subtract 5w from both sides, and these two cancel out now, leaving me with negative 2w equals 42. Divide both sides by negative 2, and I get w equals negative 21. And one final step, which is to check it. So instead of w, I'm going to use negative 21. So 3 over negative 21 plus 6 is negative 15. And 5 over negative 21 minus 4, the denominator is going to be negative 25. Okay, simplify, and you get negative 1/5 equals negative 1/5, and therefore our solution is correct. All right, so here is a final problem solving story problem. A portable media player has 2 gigabytes of storage and can hold about 500 songs. A similar but larger media player has 80 gigabytes of storage. About how many songs can the larger media player hold? So let's set up a proportion. Now, in a proportion, there are 4 spots to fill. Okay, and we know 3 out of those 4 spots. We know one has 2 gigabytes and the other one has 80 gigabytes. And the one that has 2 gigabytes has 500 songs, and we don't know what the other one's going to hold. Well, that's what you're trying to find. Right, so here's my proportion. 2 gigabytes holds 500 songs, and if I have a media player that has 80 gigabytes, this is like one of the classic iPods. The question is, how many songs will it hold? Again, a dependable method is to use the cross products. So at this point, you can realize that the GB and the songs are simply units of measurement. So you don't need to multiply those two, or you don't have to include those units when you're multiplying. You can simply multiply 2 times x and 80 times 500. 2x equals 40,000, which means x equals 20,000 songs. So if you had a media player or iPod or one of those devices that had 80 gigabytes of storage, you should be able to store an average of 20,000 songs. Now, is there another way to set up this proportion? Absolutely. And I'm sure you realize that I've color-coded these for a reason. So I can write it as 2 gigabytes equals 500 songs, and if it's 80 gigabytes, what should it equal? And if I do the cross product, you'll realize that 2 times x is 2x, 80 times 500 is 40,000, okay? But you cannot set up the proportion this way. If you do this, you're going to end up with 2 times 80 equals 500 times x. 2 times 80 is 160. That equals Let me show you why this won't work. All right, so it's going to be 160 equals 500x, and if I divide both sides by 500, I'm going to get a fraction. And common sense tells me that if a 2 gigabyte media player holds 500 songs, an 80 gigabyte player is not going to hold less than a whole of a song, right? So the best way to check this is when you line up the units, make sure that the like units are either lined up vertically like it is here, GB, GB, songs, songs, or horizontally going this way, GB, GB, songs, songs. All right. The notes are posted on the website. You should probably do that in class, and then whatever you have left to do, you should do it at home. And then tomorrow you will have some practice problems to work on in class. All right. Or maybe you're going to the lab. But make sure you copy it on the notes either from the website right now in class, and then continue to do this at home. All right. I'll see you guys Wednesday. Enjoy your day. Bye bye.